Let's jump right into this explainer and look at the absolute anomaly that is Gary Lineker. I mean, we're talking about a guy who literally conquered the penalty box and then went on to completely dominate the broadcasting studio. It's a career trajectory that is just totally unique in modern sports. You rarely see someone transition so seamlessly from a world-renowned athlete to an absolute titan in media.
But before we map out that wild journey, I want you to think back to the 1980s and 90s. Football in that era was famously brutally physical. We're talking heavy tackles, furious rivalries, and referees who kind of just let the game flow, right? So, keeping that aggressive, high-stakes environment in mind, try to guess his disciplinary record.
The answer is 0. Yep, an absolute goose egg. In 468 professional games, he received exactly 0 yellow cards and 0 red cards. Not once did a referee write his name in the notebook. You have to ask yourself, how does a striker survive, let alone thrive, in the heart of a defensive battleground without ever crossing the line?
Well, we're going to break down exactly how he pulled that off. First, we'll look at the goal-scoring machine himself. Second, his tactics and strike partnerships. Third, his reputation as the gentleman of football. And finally, that fascinating move to Japan and his total media transition.
All right, let's kick things off with part 1, the goal-scoring machine.
You simply don't reach Lineker's level without an innate, almost predatory instinct for finding the back of the net. Think about when he joined Everton for $850,000. He had a massive mountain to climb. He was brought in to replace Andy Gray, an absolute fan favorite who had just helped lead the club to league and European glory. The supporters were actually outraged. But Lineker, he completely silenced the doubters by bagging a phenomenal 38 goals in just 52 games during that 1985-86 season.
And that lethal domestic form carried straight over to the global stage during his 1986 World Cup Golden Boot run. After failing to score in the opening 2 matches, he just exploded. He hit a 25-minute hat trick against Poland, grabbed a brace against Paraguay in the last 16, and even managed a late goal in that infamous Maradona-dominated match against Argentina in the quarterfinals.
The guy was just ruthlessly efficient. He wasn't the type of player who was going to constantly dribble past 5 defenders. Instead, he relied almost entirely on 1 or 2 touches within 10 yards of the goal. That incredible positioning allowed him to average a strike every 74 minutes in Mexico, which ultimately contributed to his English record of 10 World Cup goals.
Moving right along to part 2, tactics and strike partnerships.
Now, he wasn't doing all of this alone. Great goal scorers rely heavily on the systems and the players around them. For England, he formed one of the greatest international pairings in history with Peter Beardsley. It was like a puzzle fitting perfectly together. Beardsley was the little creative genius, which was absolutely perfect for Lineker's poaching qualities. Together, those two combined for 119 appearances and 50 goals between 1986 and 1992. And that is seriously impressive when you consider the lack of daily training ground preparation at the international level.
And his tactical mind really came to the forefront following a £2.75 million move to Barcelona. Picture this. Lineker is eating lunch with his manager, Terry Venables, a couple of times a week. They're sitting at the table, literally moving cutlery around. Glasses here, forks there, just mapping out their strategies. He was a truly dedicated student of the game.
And Venables was introducing some pretty revolutionary concepts during a really turbulent time for Barcelona. They used a 4-4-2 with a diamond midfield to deliberately isolate the weakest opposing fullback, and they even employed these highly original set-piece screens. Lineker's tactical intelligence allowed him to just absorb all of this and thrive in a high-pressure system, helping the club win their first league title in 11 years.
Now let's get into part 3, the gentleman of football.
Let's pause and just let those numbers sink in for a second. Balancing 261 goal contributions across heavyweight clubs in 468 matches without a single booking, it completely defies modern football logic. Most elite strikers are constantly engaged in physical battles, getting pushed and pulled by defenders. Usually that results in at least an occasional retaliation or, a tactical foul. So what was his secret? The crucial point is how he mentally approached the game. Instead of snapping back at aggressive defenders, he channeled all his energy into finding space. He completely removed himself from the clashes that lead to referee discipline. His calm style and that strict focus on positioning were highly conscious choices that kept him on the pitch and out of the book.
Which brings us to our final act, Part 4, Japan and Media Transition.
Leaving the game is often the hardest part for any athlete, but his exit was just as fascinating as his peak. Even at the end of his English domestic career, his composure remained his defining trait.
Take the dramatic 1991 FA Cup final with Spurs. His teammate Paul Gascoigne was wildly chaotic, making reckless challenges all over the place. Meanwhile, Lineker stayed completely cool, despite an insane roller coaster of events. He had a goal disallowed, he won a penalty, and then had that penalty saved by Mark Crossley. Through all that chaos, he just kept his head. Looking for a new adventure, he headed to Japan to be the face of the newly minted J-League. He signed this massive, lucrative deal to become Toyota's corporate poster boy, which sparked a huge wave of character goods. Think t-shirts, towels, the whole shebang. But sadly, persistent toe injuries really derailed the highly anticipated Lineker effect on the pitch. He was limited to just 4 goals across 2 really frustrating seasons.
It was here in Japan, though, that we saw his outspoken side finally emerge. In his 1993 autobiography, he impartially but firmly outlined his frustration with England manager Graham Taylor. Taylor had substituted him during a crucial Euro '92 match against Sweden. That one tactical decision left Lineker stranded just 1 goal shy of Bobby Charlton's all-time scoring record, which was obviously a massive point of contention for the famously disciplined striker.
He officially hung up his boots in 1994, and his pivot was just incredible. He didn't fade away into obscurity, he built an empire. He moved immediately into media, joining The Observer and the BBC. By 1999, he'd replaced Des Lynam on Match of the Day, going on to provide us with unforgettable television moments, launch hugely successful podcasts, and cement himself as the BBC's football anchor for a quarter of a century.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a fascinating thought. How many athletes have ever transitioned so flawlessly from being a world-class talent on the field to an absolute titan off it? When you hear the name Gary Lineker, do you picture the Golden Boot winner with 0 yellow cards, or the defining voice of British football media? Take that question with you and think about what it really takes to build a legacy that completely transcends the sport itself.